I'm Belinda Conaway, your Register of Wills for Baltimore City. Welcome to The Will, a show dedicated to informing you, the citizens, on information related to wills and estates. On this week's episode, we are joined by Deputy Larry Edmond and Deputy Cynthia Blackwell as we discuss an overview of Roe and how it works for you. You're not going to want to miss the Conaway Chronicle, as I have yet another eye-opening dialogue to share with you in regards to information that you need to know about things happening right here in the community. So sit back and relax. Enjoy the next 30 minutes of hard-hitting facts, informative insight into the process of wills and estates on another edition of The Will with me, Belinda Conaway. Welcome back to The Will. I'm your host, Belinda Conaway, your Register of Wills for Baltimore City. And today we are joined by two great employees who will help convey the intricacies of the Roe process, which is the process of opening an estate for a loved one who has passed away. They will help break down the process of Roe, the departments that go into making up the Register of Wills, as well as the information you're going to need to open an estate, register your will for safekeeping, or any other information you may need about doing business with our offices. To my right is Deputy Larry Edmond. He is a supervisor of the probate department and helps to ensure that you are serviced in a respectable and timely fashion. He has been with the Register of Wills office for several years now and is versed in estate law and the process of estates like none other. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And to my left is Deputy Cynthia Blackwell, who is the supervisor of the audit department, which is tasked with handling the regular estates and finances in relation to large estates. Thanks for joining us today, Mrs. Blackwell.
Thanks for having me.
Today, we will discuss an overview of the Roe process, from filing your will for safekeeping to opening an estate, looking at each department and briefly discussing the process and what you can come to expect from Roe. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this break. Trust me, you don't want to miss this important information.
You know, I still cannot believe that Prince is gone.
I know, right? And he was so young. He died without a will.
Really? I didn't know that. I think I need to get a will.
I think you're right.
Let's not make the same mistake. Write your will today. Call us, visit us online, or check us out on social media. And remember, where there's a will, there's a way. Welcome back to The Will with Belinda Conaway. So let's get started with understanding the overall process of Roe. Mr. Edmond, you're tasked with overseeing the probate department. Briefly explain to the viewers the general overview of your department and how it works with the other departments.
I'm the initial phase as far as opening up an estate. One is that we go through the process of determining whether it's a small estate, whether it's a regular estate. We look at your assets, whether you have a house, whether there are bank accounts, whether there are stocks and bonds, and we put those items together to make a determination whether it's a small or a regular estate. There are other items that go with that as far as whether you need a bond, whether we need to do publication, etc. But once we open it up, if it's a small estate, we'll collect all our fees up front. The only difference is that when it becomes a regular estate, the fees are collected at the end. And that's where Ms. Blackwell comes in as far as doing that. And while we're talking about a small estate, one of the things that I want to emphasize is that we're getting a lot of litigation money, i.e. from Peter Nichols and Peter Angelos. And we want to make sure that the audience understands that once they open it up for litigation, every time a check comes into the estate, that check has to be reported to the Register of Wills. If we run publication, you can't distribute it until after the 6 months if we run publication. That don't mean that you can go out and start giving money to each one of the heirs, because if they're creditors, those creditors have to be paid. Normally when you give out money, it's very difficult to get it back.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, so what you're saying is that there are some cases where there will be ongoing checks coming into the estate for various reasons. And when that happens, that has to be reported to the Register of Wills office. And then there's a process that they go through to make sure, because there's an order of payment.
That's correct.
That determines how people are supposed to be paid and in what order.
That's correct.
So once that comes in, then where does it go?
Knowing what we end up doing is that the first bill to get paid in any estate is the person that paid for the funeral. They're entitled to be reimbursed primarily because whether that money was left to them based upon an insurance policy, which a lot of times people fail to understand. If I leave you an insurance policy, that's your insurance policy to do whatever you desire. But most of the times the heirs will use that money to basically pay for the funeral. But the law indicates that if I paid for it, regardless of how I received the money, then I'm entitled to be reimbursed. And so that's the first bill that gets paid. And there's an order to register wills fees. So I just want to make sure that individual understand is that there's an order in which it's done. We also give them a checklist as far as what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do that. And a lot of the things we tell them, just like now, we're putting out a lot of information. It's very hard to digest all that information at one time. But I always tell them, if you have doubts, give us a call. And you can call us at 410-752-5131. And you can dial me directly. My extension is 320. We're there to answer your question and help you navigate through the process of probate.
What are the questions that you find in your department? So once everything is finished, then it comes to you.
It comes to
And
us.
you check the numbers.
We check the numbers. First thing we look at are the assets left by the decedent in their name alone, which means there's no one else's name on it, whether it be a house, car, bank accounts, stocks, bonds. That becomes a probated asset. We determine if there's a will, then distribution is made according to the will. If not, it's distributed according to the laws of intestacy. We also make sure that all claims are paid before any distribution is made. Now, unlike the smaller states, the funeral is the first expense to be reimbursed. Through a regular state, it's the administrative fees that are first. The bond, they get reimbursed for running notice to daily record, certified mail, and then the probate fee. The probate fee is the administrative fee that we collect for the state based on the value of the total assets. It's on a scale beginning from $50 all the way up to $2,500. So we make sure that that is a fee that's going to be collected from the beginning, the administrative fee. Then it's the funeral, and then any other expenses pertaining to the assets of the estate. Once all of those expenses have been verified, then that's when distribution is made according to either the will or the law.
I know that we talked on a previous episode about what happens when money is not dispersed the way that it's supposed to. So when you find that, when you look over the distribution sheets and you find that there something is not right, then what happens after that?
Well, technically, the biggest reason why money is not distributed correctly, say the decedent left money to his children, and one of those children survived the decedent but died before the estate has been settled. The remaining heirs feel that because that person passed away, then the remaining money should go to them. Unless it's designated in the will, it does not. That person's estate needs to be open, and then his share of the money goes to the estate. The process is when you open up a regular estate, you have 6 to 9 months before you can close it. 6 months because you have to allow 6 months for anyone to file objection to the appointment of the personal representative. So they should not be doing any distributing. We have to do our paperwork according to the distribution of the will or the distribution of the law. So then we have to notify the heirs that this account has been filed. The personal representative is responsible for giving them a copy of that account. Once those heirs find out, wait a minute, I didn't get that money, then they would go judicial. They would inform the court that they haven't received the money, and then a hearing is set in for the judges to bring all parties in to try to rectify.
I know that you gave a timeline, for average timeline, for how long it takes before the estate is closed. But when you talked about checks coming in from different cases, that there may be checks, that can go on for years.
It can go on for years. And basically we've had, example like yesterday, we had an individual that had received over $120,000. So we are getting documentations from the attorneys. And as soon as we get the documentation, even though we tell the personal representative, they are supposed to report that. Once we get that documentation, we're going to send out a memo to you indicating that you need to come in and report that, because to me, if you're not reporting it to us, there's a good possibility you're not reporting it to the heirs. So basically, we're looking at not only for the state of Maryland and the Register of Wills, but we also are looking out for the heirs to make sure that they receive the money the way it should be done. And at the same time that we're protecting those heirs, because at that point, if you get a large sum of money in, then basically they need to know what's coming in and what they should be receiving.
So I'm sure that, let's say that a estate has been open for 5 years and people have reported checks to you, maybe they were checks for $26.18, and they say, listen, this has gone on for a long time, when is it going to end, why do I need to keep reporting information to you? I get the checks, I'm giving it to the people I'm supposed to, but what you're saying is that sometimes people get the money in, they don't necessarily distribute it
That's correct.
in accordance to the will or
Right.
the law.
And that's the check and balances that we have, that we've developed a rapport with the attorneys to the point that we try and keep up with that as much as possible. And once we found out that these assets have not been reported, then we basically notify the personal representative. We're at a point now when an individual comes in and open up an estate, we have them to sign a form saying any assets that comes in has to be reported back to the Register of Wills. That's why we give you the documents. At the same time, we give you a little folder that has all the information in it, all the timelines as far as filing the list of interested persons, information reports, and things of that nature. So it's straightforward as far as what you need to do, and all you have to do is reflect back on the information that we provided for you.
And also, as you said before, if there's a question, you can always call
That's correct.
410-752-5131, so that, because it is a lot to
It
take in, and for some people, lost someone that you love, and now you have to deal with the estate. You also have the relatives sometimes where, you know, people don't feel like they're getting what they're supposed to get. Sometimes they don't feel like they're getting it in a timely fashion, and that can be a little overwhelming. And so they can always call the office for information or clarification about any of the forms or what needs to be reported, or the timeline, because there's a timeline to report this information. And hopefully it does not get to the point where it has to go to orphans court, but that is an option when people are not satisfied with what's going on, or they believe that things have not happened in the state the way that they should have, then their recourse is orphans court. So once the estate is closed and once you finish your auditing process, then the will goes to
The account, the audit, once we audit it, we do what is called, it's audited through an administration account. Once that account has been audited, we've collected all fees, made sure all creditors have been paid, then we forward the account to Orphans Court for approval. All interested persons are notified with a copy of the order once it's been approved, so that they do know that account has been filed, that account has been approved, and you're waiting for a distribution.
Okay, so there's a lot of notice to the interested parties listed in the will, and that's another thing that people should have available with their important papers, because there's some families, relatives live in different states. We have some where relatives live in different countries. And so having that information available so that whoever is in charge of handling your important business has a list of interested parties and their address and phone number. So once the estate goes to be closed, all parties are notified, so that if you think that there's something that you should have gotten and you haven't, you are aware that this is coming to a point where it's about to close. Correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Also, I just want to go back. They're distraught. They come in, they get their paperwork, they put it in that nice little folder and they put it away. But 9 months from the date that you open that regular estate, if you haven't filed the documentation, you're going to get a nice little note from our office, which is a delinquent notice. And that notice lets them know you're delinquent, you have not filed your administration account, and it's time for you to come in to see the audit department.
Okay, because there's a timeline for papers to come in, and we do everything we can to make sure that people comply with it. We put everything in a folder so that people have the information together, so they can go back and take a look and see. They can always call. That number is on the folder. The website is on the folder. We try to make sure that the information is available for you to make this process as easy as possible.
Also, a very good document that the probate administration often gives is that acknowledgement of responsibilities, and that's a list of the timeline of when they should file the documents that are required. So with that, but again, like I say, sometimes they tuck that folder away and they forget about it, so that we don't send a reminder, but they will get a delinquent notice, which is more or less a reminder. We allow them another couple of weeks to come in to file their documentation.
And just for general information, is that a lot of times we get calls where one is that they say, we don't know what's going on in the estate. Well, just to let you know is that once the estates open up, it becomes public record. So anything that's there, if the PR is not talking to you, which they don't necessarily have to as long as they're doing their duties, you can come in and look at the documentation. We have documentation that show what they brought in. If for some reason you come in, you look at the Schedule B, which is in a smaller state that shows all the assets, and for some reason there's something that's missing that you know is not there, then at that point you can question the PR, or at the same time you can basically petition the court and say, hey, they didn't bring the Mercedes-Benz in, and I know it was in father's name alone. Mm-hmm. At that point, the court will go through and issue the show cause to say what happened to the Mercedes-Benz, and they have to respond to that. And if for some reason it was an error on their behalf, then at that point they can turn back around and bring that in. And that's why I say it's important, anytime additional assets are discovered, they have to be reported, because that deals with honesty, and at the same time it deals with doing your job as a personal representative.
Yes, it sounds like there are a lot of checks and balances.
That's correct.
To make sure that all parties are notified and that the timelines are met. In my experience, it seems like time moves very slowly until you get past the funeral. And then you get past the funeral and, you know, people putting the pieces back together, and they start picking back up with the regular life, and sometimes these deadlines slip by. And so it's good to know that they can refer back to the sheet that lets them know exactly what's required. It's in a folder that's given to you so that you can keep all of the information together, and you can also call if you have a question for clarification. We are here to work with you. I thank you very much for being here today and sharing this important information, because we want people to understand the process, and we want people to know that we are here to assist and to support however we can. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Will. I'm Belinda Conaway, your Register of Wills for Baltimore City. Be sure to write your will today and register it for safekeeping with my office. For more information, call 410-752-5131. And remember, where there's a will, there is a way. Welcome to another edition of the Conaway Chronicle. This week, I want to talk to you about our office's Community Engagement Department and how you can have a representative from our offices come out to your community association meeting, church, or civic group gathering in order to answer some of the important questions you may have about wills and estates and debunk some of the myths that surround the process. Since 2015, I've made it my mission to make sure that the Register of Wills office works for you. I believe that we should go beyond the walls of the Circuit Courthouse building in which we are housed and bring the information of wills and estates out to you. That's why I created this department, in order to have multiple avenues of information being available to those who will one day have to deal with our office. So if you would like to have a representative from our outreach team come to your community and discuss this very important process, please give us a call at 410-752-5131 and ask to speak to someone from our community engagement team. They will schedule a date and time that is good for you and send someone out who is willing to answer any and all questions you may have. And they even have a bag of information so that when you go home, you have something in writing to remind you about what was talked about. Please remember that you can always get in touch with us and have the information necessary for understanding the process.
Hi, my name is Aria, and I'm a senior at Frederick Douglass High, and I will be reading parts of Mary McLeod Bethune's will. Mary McLeod Bethune was a noted African-American educator and mentor. Established in 1904 by Mary McLeod Bethune with 5 girls and $1.50 cash in a rented cabin. By 1918, there was a 4-story building called Faith Hall, a a 2-story building used for kitchen, and a new 40,000 auditorium on 20 acres. Classes offered in sewing, dressmaking, domestic science, gardening, poultry raising, raffia work, rug weaving, chair canning, broom making, teacher and nurses training. An additional building some distance from the campus was fitted up for the education of boys and men. This is where she wrote to her loved ones. I leave you love. Love builds positive and helpful. It is more beneficial than hate. Injuries quickly forgotten, quickly passed away. Personally and racially, our enemies must be forgiven. Our aim is to create a world of fellowship and justice where no man's skin, color, or religion is held against them. It connotes brotherhood, and to me, brotherhood of the man is the noblest concept in human relations. Loving your neighbor means being interracial, interreligious, and international. I leave you finally a responsibility to our young people. The world around us really belongs to youth, for youth will take over its future management. Our children must never lose their zeal for building a better world. They must not be discouraged from aspirings towards greatness, for they are to be leaders of tomorrow. Nor must they forget that the masses of our people are still underprivileged, ill-housed, and victimized by discrimination. We have a powerful potential in our youth, and we must have the courage to change old ideas and practices so that we may direct the power towards good ends. So, Mary Bethune, she cared for these young ladies like no one else did. She gave them all the education that she could and taught them trades, and she really believed in equality.
She really wanted to help a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people, because she was the first to open a black girls' school.
An all-girls school?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was very unselfish. That was very
Right.
unselfish, very helping.
And she said that the youth are the future, basically.
So you gotta teach them while they're young,
Yeah.
so they can lead.
I want to thank the students of the Recording Arts, Media, and Production program right here at Frederick Douglass High School for producing our show, and thank you for joining us today. Tune in next time, and remember, where there's a will, there is a way.